hardcore boxing fans out there, how are you doing? Big Porky here, the voice of hardcore boxing, and I hope you've subscribed as well, or I'll be coming to pay you a visit.
Porky's Corner is proud to be sponsored by Spartan Site Solutions. They are specialists in civil engineering and demolition contracts for the construction industry. Interested parties should visit their website or contact Porky's Corner for a referral at porkycorner@mail.com.
Hello all you hardcores out there, how are you doing? It's Russ here from Porky's Corner, biggest gob in sport. Welcome to part 3. I bet you're all enjoying this hardcore talk. Hey? Well, we couldn't do a video with Julian without roasting the Crushinator. Hey, unbelievable. What's the Gab been saying now? Oh, Conor Benn and Eubank, there's going to be a delay. It is what it is, isn't it, eh? Unbelievable. So after all that, from Eddie Hills and company, it looks like there's going to be a delay. Eh? Pop, bang on that one. Unbelievable. The actual cheek of these people, to keep us on the hook. And we've called it from day one, haven't we? All we've been saying is they're just going to keep dragging it out and dragging it out. Stay relevant. But here's Julian. Let's roll with it. Right, the GAD. Here we go. Boxing Social. 20 minutes ago. Gareth A. Davis, Raw, expects Chris Eubank and Conor Benn delay. Now, all they've done is delay and give us dates, and is, you know, is it something like it's 8 or 9 times the goalposts have moved in 17 months, in a couple of days. It's gone on, and now it's 18 months next month for hearing. And where are we with this? Why don't you just show us the evidence to prove it? You know, Simon Jordan says he's innocent. I'll let you go here, Jules.
Right. If you say to me, Ebony Bridges, Eddie Earn's amateur career, Conor Benn, Gareth A. Davis, you're going to have me doing a 9-parter tonight, mate. Right. So where are we? So you and I, right, who remember the emails you get, couple of clowns, so me and you, couple of clowns, couple of haters, and the rest of the commission. We predict this stuff all the time. Yet we're haters, yet we're clowns, yet we're this, yet we're that. We predict this stuff all the time. And then you get the real clowns, okay, the Frank Smiths, the Eddie Earns, and the Gareth A. Davises who are telling you this is going to happen, this is definitely going to happen, this is definitely going to happen. And then when it doesn't happen, the guy will pop up like you just said on Boxing Social and be all knowledgeable going, you know, I think it's I think there's going to be a bit of a delay here. I expect it to happen in March. And then in March, everybody goes to fever pitch. We think the board are probably going to, that's when the appeal will go through and win or lose and And people fall for this. What do they say? Like, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. And people buy this crap, don't they? Now, did you think they were going to fight February the 3rd?
No.
No, neither did I. Did you think they were going to fight last September when they told you they were going to fight then?
No, but they were knackered because they were £1 million in deep with PR, weren't they? So,
None of us, so us haters, know-alls, we didn't think they were going to fight, and we don't think they're going to fight in February. So we had Frank Smith a couple of weeks ago. It's done. It's done. What more can I tell you? It's done. And then we had him saying, well, we're not bothered who's sanctioning it really, but we're gonna announce it in the next few days. And then you had him saying, and Eddie doing the same thing, they shadow each other, and he shadows Eddie. And then you have the GAD piping up and everybody's piping up. And it's become really clear to everybody that the board aren't going to license Conor Benn. Unless he's got some absolute mind-blowing evidence, which is yet to submit to UKAD and to the Board of Control to sit down and to actually talk to them about the evidence, unless he's got that, then this fight ain't happening unless one, it's in the US, which there's no appeal for that fight to happen in the US, or two, it has a board license. Now he's not going to get a board license anytime soon, and
No.
even if the appeal, this is what gets lost amongst all this stuff, and you know this, and ultimately, right, you've got to look. I ain't got this written down. I'm going on memory, but nobody knows the details, right, about this appeal and this jurisdiction in terms of which drug test it is in relation to do it, because there were two failed drug tests, and there were different circumstances around both tests. So when I say there were different circumstances, one of them was part of the WBC's clean boxing program, and one of them wasn't. Now, what we were told is, for example, so when the Conor's shouting and he's saying the WBC have cleared me, I'm going back a little bit now. When he said the WBC have cleared me, he was only talking in relation to the first test. Now, people who reported on the details at the time, there was kind of like footnotes within the subtext was saying, we're only talking about the WBC in relation to the first test. So when the WBC cleared him, which they didn't, as we know, they said it's probably down to an overconsumption of eggs. And Conor didn't like that reasoning, by the way. They were only talking about one test of the two. Now, I think what the real issue, and it's hard to articulate this because there's so many grey areas and so much information we're getting from different things. I think what Robert Smith, his position is this: we need to look at both of the tests, right? The WBC and the Anti-Doping Agency appeal might overrule us in this instance, but which tests are they overruling on, Russell? One, two, or both? And I think this is where there are technicalities, and this is where the British Boxing Board of Control are not giving us details, whether they can or whether they can't or not. And Eddie Hearn is being really slippery and slimy, and Frank Smith is, and everybody else is. But it's to do with jurisdiction, but jurisdiction of what? The first test or the second test? Terry Chappie-Dama, by the way, could explain this better than me. But there were two tests to answer for. And I think that's where the Board of Control are coming from. They're saying, listen, there are two tests. You've got a jurisdictional argument potentially on one of them, which was a clean enrollment of a clean boxing program. But on the second one, you don't have jurisdiction. So what you don't know, Russell, and what I don't know, and I think the one thing I'll give Frank Smith is he does know this, and Eddie Hearn does know this, and Robert Smith, which tests, because it is massively confusing, which tests are these debates about with the Board of Control and the UK Anti-Doping Panel and UKAD?
Is it both or one?
And this is the thing. This is why I think Robert Smith, when Robert Smith has been asked point blank by TalkSport, if the result of the UK Anti-Doping Panel is upheld, and they're still saying that the British Boxing Board of Control and UKAD jurisdictionally don't have a right to impose a suspension or a ban, you don't have a right because it's not within your jurisdiction. If that's upheld, Robert Smith was asked point blank, will you then relicense him? And what did Robert Smith say? He wouldn't commit, would he?
No.
He said, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, etc., etc. So what we don't know is the legal arguments now, what's happening. And I believe, because I've slept since then, there are 2 failed tests, and I believe that one of the tests is being treated. And what we don't know, and I'm not making a good way of, I'm not articulating this well tonight because it's getting tired now, but what I'm saying is I don't believe this jurisdictional argument is over both tests. I think it's over one. And I think Robert Smith's position, and I'm not speaking for Robert Smith on the board, but I think his position is we need full answers and full investigations and the ability to look at the details and evidence around both tests, not just the one, but both. Because if you point blank, this is what we're saying, no one's asking the right questions. If you point blank said to Eddie Hearn, right, the WBC ruling that he was allowed back into the rankings and that they put it down to a clomiphene and potentially a contamination through eggs, is that in relation to the first test, the second test, or both? If you actually ask that close question, I think Eddie Hearn would say it's in relation to the first test. It's the second test. By that point, the second test was the fight had been signed, hadn't it? The first time, in July, that fight wasn't made, was it?
No.
So you can see what I'm saying? The first failure in July was covered up because no fight had been sanctioned by the Board of Control at that point. So he'd failed a drugs test on behalf of the WBC's clean boxing program. He wasn't in competition for a fight. He hadn't signed for a fight. We don't know if the license was
They
renewed.
cleared him on that one, didn't they?
They've cleared him on that one, exactly. But then the failure at the end of September, which came out a couple of weeks
First
later.
couple of days in October.
Yep. When that came out, right, that is what the Board of Control started to say, look, this fight can't happen. And then it came out about the first test. You see what I'm saying? One was WBC and VADA in relation to a clean boxing program. The second one was a voluntary doping agency. It was not in relation to the WBC's clean boxing program. It was just a voluntary, just a random test. And they would have been tested again, by the way. And they were tested by UKAD, and it was cleared by UKAD. UKAD didn't find anything. But you see where I'm going with this one? It's like, it's massively complicated, but what they're doing and what Frank Smith and what everybody's doing is, the reason they're not sharing all of the information is not because they can't and not because of NDAs. They're not putting this in the public domain because this back and forth with UKAD and the UKAD anti-doping panel, in my opinion, is only in relation to one test where they say you do not have jurisdiction. And I think Robert Smith wants to. It's like, when you have 2 pieces of evidence and you have a deadline to submit the first piece to all your evidence. Yeah. And a judge will only hear the evidence that you've submitted before this specific date. I think what the clever lawyers have done, and I'm making assumptions, I think the clever lawyers of Conor Benn have said, we're focusing on this, you don't have jurisdiction for this, but we're not looking at that second piece and that second failure just yet. And I think Robert Smith's got that in his mind, and he's like, no matter what UKAD say, I've got 2 test results, 2 test failures that
they can only act on one.
It can only act on one. And I think he's like, I might be wrong. I'm not being wrong so far in this mess, have I? Or not far off the target anyway. Might have been technically wrong on 1 or 2 things, but generally what I'm saying is he's limited to what he can do.
Tide, aren't they?
The Tide, yeah, they're limited to what they can do. And if you remember, there were lots of rumours around, people saying, well, why didn't the board just pull the fight? And there was a belief, wasn't there, that people were saying that they'd had a writ slapped on the cease and desist, apparently, what they could talk about, what they can't talk about. And what you're not hearing is, like I keep saying, that none of these boxing socials and everybody else, no one's asking the right questions. One, do you accept clomiphene was in his system? People saying, what are you talking about? We're past that point. We know it was because they're looking at his body and the medical part of him and his biology, etc. No one has said, was clomiphene in his system? Do you at least accept that? No one's done that. And what no one's asking now is that point blank question: is the ongoing appeal with UKAD, the UKAD anti-doping panel, and the British Boxing Board of Control, is that in relation to one test, the second test, the first test, or both tests? No one's asked that question, Russell, which is why we're not getting clarity. But I'm repeating the same point, but my understanding and my belief is Robert Smith is incredibly frustrated. He knows there are 2 failed tests, but he's limited because of the technicalities of the law. He's limited what he can say, but what he can do. And I think even if the UK anti-doping panel overrule the Board of Control and they say, in our opinion, you don't have jurisdiction, you can't stop him boxing, I think the Board of Control then are going to use discretion and they're not going to give him a license, mate, because he's failed 2 tests. And I'm out of breath, but you see what I'm saying? It's massively complicated, and there's a lot of smoke and mirrors, but no one's telling us what tests.
They're
these
saying
debates.
everything, but telling us nothing.
That's exactly it. They're saying everything, but telling us nothing.
It's a game of show and tell. They're showing us.
Yeah, it's like when Frank Smith, Conor Ben, and Eddie Hearn have said about 20 times, the WBC have cleared me to box. Now that's an out and out untruth, isn't it? Because the WBC don't clear you to box. No. Licensing commissions clear you to box. The regulators of sport in a specific jurisdictional area clear you to box, medically or otherwise. They clear you to box. The WBC can say, we see no reason why we can't put you back in our rankings, but they don't issue some with a license, because if the WBC have cleared Conor Ben to box, we'll fight for WBC title then. You can't, because you haven't got a license.
Exactly. Do you think that they've spun that many webs now that there's none left to spin?
Yeah, I think the using, which is what predicted for a while now, they're using the media, aren't they? They're getting, as we said last week, who's the biggest kind of critic and the most vocal critic?
Judge Jordan.
Judge Jordan's been the most vocal critic. And it's a really, really common type of defense. I'm going to go off on one now, right? But there's a film.
Oh, secret meeting.
But listen, you like this one, right? I know Jules goes off on one, people. This will only take 2 minutes, yeah? There's a film called And Justice for All. It's Al Pacino, John Forsyth. It's a brilliant, brilliant film. Now, Al Pacino is a young, up-and-coming lawyer. He hates the corruption in the law, etc. And there's a judge, a senior judge, who he hates his guts. They hate each other. Now, this senior judge gets accused of a really brutal rape. So what this senior judge does, it's a stroke of genius, is the person he has to defend him, it's a fantastic film, is the one lawyer who hates him with a passion. So this judge asks Al Pacino to defend him. And Al Pacino's like, why do you want me to defend him? And he says, it's really simple. You hate my guts. And if you believe I'm innocent, then we can convince a jury that I'm innocent by the one guy who hates my guts. If he defends me, everybody will believe I'm innocent. And this is exactly what's happening. And when I was seeing this unfold a few weeks ago and I predicted it, I was thinking about And Justice for All with Al Pacino. So Eddie Hearn must have seen And Justice for All. Maybe Barry Hearn's seen it, and it's a classic film. And I said, you know what we need to do? And this is where you and I are ahead of these guys. Do you know what we need to do? We need to get the one person on Conor Ben's side who is really outspoken against Conor Ben, and he's been really a critic of Ben, about procedures and processes and behaviors and everything. If we can get him on side, then what happens? What happens is the public say, But that Simon Jordan's a great guy, you know. He really is straight down the middle. If Simon Jordan believes Conor Benn, then he must be innocent. He's got to be innocent. And that's what Eddie Hearn's done. So Eddie, and Justice for All, John Forsyth, Al Pacino, I'm guessing it's in your Blu-ray collection and you've seen it and it's one of your favourite films, because what you've done has been done before. It's very, very clever. You get the one guy who nobody expects to defend you, then that means you must be innocent, right, Connor?
He's saying he's innocent, Judge Jordan. Now he spoke to him.
So that's what I'm saying. He's done the injustice for all. He's got the
evidence.
He's got the one person who would never defend Conor Benn defending him. It's very clever.
Is that where we're at now with boxing, where they can just take what they want and just manipulate the press?
Yeah, but the law, and you know the law, you've been on the wrong side of it enough times, if you don't mind me saying, mate, but you spent a lot of time studying it because you had time to do that, don't you, when you're in trouble, right? You know the law is very technical, don't you?
Very.
Very, very technical. Now, the law doesn't bring things like morality and justice and truth.
Rules.
It's rules, and it's not about justice and truth, is it? The law. It's about technical rules. Yeah. Does assault tick this box, that box, that box, that box? Two boxes it doesn't tick. It's not classed as assault. We downgrade it.
Yeah.
And the law is a very technical thing. Well, drugs procedures and anti-doping and the British Boxing Board of Control and all these things are very, very technical things. And if the British Boxing Board of Control truly did not have official jurisdiction and they don't have a chain of custody and documentation to prove that they have jurisdiction to suspend or to deny Conor Benn a license, they're in a very difficult position. And because they've got some prehistoric rules and the rules won't be updated in according probably with the pace of what's going on with anti-doping, what you're going to do now is you're going to get this situation where they're going to be put under so much pressure. I don't believe they're going to buckle, by the way. I think they've been quite staunch on this. But they're going to be put under so much pressure. And now we've got public pressure. However, thankfully for people like Porky's Corner and the Hat Man and Ultratech and all these people who weren't born yesterday, thankfully for people like yourself who are trailblazers really doing what you're doing, it's actually backfired, hasn't it? Because you only have to read the comments and people saying Simon Jordan's sold out.
Yeah.
People have seen what you've done, Simon Jordan and Eddie Hearn. Do you know why people have seen what you've done? Because it's gone on for that long, mate, hasn't it?
Yeah.
You've tried everything. If Simon Jordan, right at the beginning, had have come out and defended Ben and spoke to Ben and the team and said, you know what, I truly believe him. Honestly, I believe him. Listen, you haven't seen what I've seen. If all that was done at the beginning, there'd be some credibility in terms of what they're saying. There'd be some credence in terms of what they're saying. But because they've been slippery and sliding and it's gone on now for like 18 months and they've tried every single thing you can think of, from contamination at the labs. Day one, not in my system, not in my system. Contamination at the labs. Then going the WBC route as opposed to going straight away down the UKAD route. Then doing that, they've wriggled, they've gone into this, they've gone into that. They said, we'll show the contamination at the labs. The labs have been, the samples have been touched by 15 different people. This has happened. They've tried to show as much as they can. Then they bring the dream team in. Then they bring the document, 270 pages, what becomes 40 pages, blah, 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 because you've tried absolutely everything. And now your final roll of the dice is to bring Judge Jordan in, someone who believes an honest, popular figure and a social media influencer. You brought him in, and most people are calling bullshit and saying, Jordan, you've sold out. Eddie did you twice on TalkSport and embarrassed you. And yeah, you've sold out, pal. And that's exactly what's happened, mate. And it's like, no one believes Conor Benn is innocent, apart from a very small select few and the brainwashed.
Okay. I know a criminal lawyer called Celia, as you know, and I've spoke to her a few times over this not for a while, but in last year or so, and she, like others, is baffled how Calla and Eddie Hills, the 6-0 Iceman from Billericay, well, by way of, she's baffled how Calla Montana and Eddie Hills have not been arrested and took him for questioning for what's gone on here, because they were selling a show with that 20,000 sellout, hotels, flights, trains, coaches, people planning and everything, and they were selling it on the back end of 2 failed dope tests that they tried to rush up. They even went on the biggest program in the day is the ITV program, the morning one. I'm not sure if it's Fernan, Philip, or whoever it is who do that. It's like that
Susanna Reid, who's my favourite morning girl, is Susanna.
Susanna Reid and whoever's with her used to be peers. They went on there, but knowing that this was going on in background. So out of all that, how are they not getting done for? Is it embezzling or fraud or whatever? Why is there no criminal proceedings against them? That's what
There definitely should be. She's right, Celia. There should be some.
If it were America, there would have been.
You're selling something that's faulty, knowing it's faulty and selling it as being pure, aren't you? And ultimately, that's surely under the Trade Description Act or something. There's something immoral about doing that, but there's also something potentially illegal as well. I don't know. That'd be for Celia, obviously, to tell you that. But I always
told me. She says it were basically criminal that they've got off with it.
I always toyed with the idea of asking my daughter to have a look at this, but she's too busy at the moment. You know, she got I'm not bragging, she got a first-class degree in law. She's doing a master's degree right now, but she's literally working 7 days a week. And I always toyed with the idea of just asking her to look into it, maybe as a case study, or as I think the timings didn't quite work out as part of a degree. It'd been fascinating to have people talk about this at law school, just to see what they could have potentially come up with, because that's the thing. You see, the technicalities of the law is something that's beyond us, which was why I was trying to talk about the 1 or 2 tests and not perhaps coming across well enough, because there's a lot of information, isn't there? But you're right. I remember them being on live television selling that fight. And at that time, they were all smiling and grinning and building up this huge fight, encouraging people to pick the pay-per-view tickets and just drumming up interest.
There's only so many tickets left, he said, didn't he, Eddie?
And how would you feel as well if you were one of the sponsors on that night and you'd put some money into that sponsorship of effectively a dirty athlete? How would you feel?
I'd be fuming.
They've got no credibility, and this is the thing. Boxing's always been a shady sport, you know. But what they did, the difference is the shadiness and the dirtiness about boxing has generally happened under the radar, hasn't it? Under the public eye, and it's been something that's been kind of lurked in a dark, dirty corner somewhere. They've actually publicly tried to do this, haven't they? They've publicly lied to people. They've tried to push the fight forward. And then even turned around and said, oh, the boxing board of control, they were the only ones who could pull this fight. I mean, have you ever heard as much nonsense in your life?
Yeah, have you?
I'm not defending the board, by the way. I never will. But listen, you're the ones. This ultimately is down to Conor Benn at the end of the day. And
yeah,
unlike other fighters, you just walked away from. You said, well, he's got to now prove his innocence. You've backed him, and you just happen to have backed him so much, not because you truly believe in him, because he's a lovely lad, because he's was potentially your next biggest money spinner. And I said to you, didn't I, a few weeks ago, I goes, you watch him fight Ugas in America in February.
Well, he's probably going to have to go to America now, because I don't even see it ending in January. I see appeals going and it dragging out. There are all too many egos, isn't there?
That's where I'm coming from, Russell. I think even if Robert Smith doesn't get what he wants, I'm not convinced that the Board of Control have always been kind of like, to some extent, self-regulating and self-monitoring. This is slightly different, but to some extent, but I think there's something with the board it's like technically we might be not allowed to do this, but I think they know everything they've gathered together, they've got some astute people on the board of control, some very ex-high ranking police officers, you know, QCs, the whole lot. They know his bank to rights from the information they've got, and I don't believe they've got all the information.
Their heels in because they're old school, aren't they?
They know his bank to rights, and I think they're really uncomfortable. They're like, no, this is not a vendetta against Conor Benn. It doesn't go back to Nigel Benn's days. It's nothing to do with that.
Huh.
You're trying to get out of something that other people have had to have a ban for, and you're trying to get out of it. Strict liability. You can't prove how it's got in your system. It is in your system. You can't prove it's not. And the very fact that you're trying to get away on a technicality, a jurisdictional technicality, it's morally wrong. And I don't think the board are going to license him. And I think what you're going to do is this is going to play out. He's going to fight in. When's he going to fight? He's going to fight in February, the US. Yeah. And then they'll finally say, well, hang on a minute. They'll have an offline conversation with Robert Smith and UKAD and say, look, if we do sit down with you properly, never mind we've already sat down with you. If we sit down with you properly, is it likely that your license is in July? And if they get a bit of a wink and a bit of a nod, I think they'll say, right, we'll say we've served a 2-year silent ban. That 2-year silent ban's gone. And they'll allow him to fight in July. That's what I think is a likely scenario. I'll be 1, amazed, and 2, massively disappointed if he fights in February in the UK.
You think they'll try and wear them out like Fury did with lawyers?
Yeah, that's what they do, isn't it? Because it's like the one thing I was reading. I don't spend a lot of time reading about this stuff, but I was reading about the Fury case. We'll get some hate now. We'll get some vile emails now. But what I was reading about with the Fury case, so cue all you Fury haters in Russell's inbox in the morning. Ultimately, right, what happens with UKAD, Russell, yeah? And I'm not trying to patronize anybody now. It's only because I read this myself and I recently learned it myself. Like any business or like any organization who are funded by whatever, you have a budget, don't you? You have a set amount of money. Now, UKAD, I think it was 6 or 7% of their funding is allocated for legal fees.
Yeah.
So it's not an unlimited pot. And I think they'd already spent about 600 or 500 or 600,000 pounds in legal fees on the Tyson Fury, Hughie Fury case.
Yeah.
But mainly Tyson Fury. So effectively what I'm saying is they'd blown a big chunk of their allocation. Like any business, you have allocations for cost of goods, for admin, for this, for legal, for insurance, for utility bills, etc., etc. 6 or 7% of their funding is for legal fees. They'd already blown that, or they'd blown a big percentage of their annual legal fees on the Tyson Fury case. So when it came to an appeal, what happens is sometimes you say, you've blown your money. This is Tyson Fury. We've got more money, by the way. We've got more money than you. Yeah? We've more money than you. So if you want to carry on, we'll go back to court. We'll go back to court. But you can't afford to do this. And then what happens is they settle, don't they?
Yeah.
They find a middle ground, which says, all right, then, will you agree? We'll put a statement out that says, all right, well, we've done a retrospective ban, because what I did find out, and you might remember this, Russell, was when Fury was banned, they were asking, UKAD were asking for a 4-year ban.
Yeah.
And 2 years was what they agreed on.
Yeah.
And it comes down to funding. It's not just, it comes down to funding. So your point there about the British Boxing Board of Control and about UKAD, they'll only have so much money they can battle this with, where they'll say, right, that's the compromise, done. Do you agree with that? Let's meet in the middle. All right, done. 18-month retrospective ban, 2 year, we'll knock 6 months off for this, blah, 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 blah. And then Eddie Hearn puts a statement out, and it'll be like words to the effect of, right, there's going to box in July in the UK. Board have agreed, and they'll spin it that there wasn't enough evidence to give him a proper 2 or 4 year ban. But you and I know It's down to funding. It's down to budgets. There's not enough money in the pot, and the Board of Control can only put so much resource and so much funding into this. As can UKAD, as could UKAD with Tyson Fury. And this is where compromises are met.
Yeah. We've spoke. We haven't really covered the secret meeting, but he's sneaking us in it from Jordan. He's speaking to Robert Smith on quiet. Eddie didn't like it. Then he's secretly meeting Ben. We spoke about that, didn't we, all a little bit? We'll finish off on this then, because there's 6 minutes left. Right. Where does it leave these people here who've defended, obviously, Conor Ben? Tony Bellew, Darren Barker, Tony Sims, Charlie Sims, the manager, the GAD, Judge Jordan, Eddie Hills, Calla, and the old man, Nige, bruv, eat a seats, Nige. Where does it leave that shower of shite?
None of them look great. But ultimately, time's a healer in terms of public perception. And I think it depends on the outcome. It depends on the outcome of this appeal. It depends on what the next moves are by Robert Smith. But I don't think the Eubank Ben fight will happen. That's just been an instinct of mine. Initially, I thought it might do. Then you go off and on and off, don't you? I don't think it'll happen. I think Ben at some point will have to fight a credible welterweight. He'll get hammered, literally hammered. Certainly, if it's a puncher who's still got some prime left, not dragging up a Keith Thurman or someone like that, he'll get hammered and they'll move on to the next big thing. Like we started part one. Tonight's been a marathon, but we started part one, Russell, talking about Devon Haney, didn't we? About now, is it the next Floyd Mayweather? What we're saying is the world keeps
outside of Ben.
But what I'm saying is the world keeps spinning, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So after a while, the drugs thing will be not forgotten, but a distant memory. People get excited by something new coming through. Ennis might prove to be the new star at welterweight. Crawford might move up, fight Canelo. And then the drum roll starts for Conor Ben to fight an Ennis or someone if he doesn't get beat in the interim. And people forget about this. And the people you've just mentioned, the GAD and stuff, they'll all be getting giddy about somebody else, somewhere else, on something else. And this will just be a bit of a black stain. And boxing will continue to be dirty and murky and grubby. These guys will continue to earn a living or steal a living, if you like. And, when I read comments on some of these forums, let's say, I don't care if he's guilty or not. I just want to see the fight. When I read comments like that, and this is not just one comment, this is a lot of people saying, just let him fight. You've lost, really, don't you? And shameless people will always prosper in life, unfortunately, Russell. I think the best we can hope for is that Conor Ben gets exposed for what he is, which is a fighter who's not world class, who's never won a belt, who's never proven anything. He's nearly 27, and he's nowhere really in terms of being a real
now. He's 27.
27 now, my God. What was Teofimo Lopez? Was he 23 when he was world champion? What was Devin Haney, 22 or something? Is he really a superstar at 27? He's still not even won a British title. Is he really a superstar?
No.
Yeah.
It's pretense, isn't it?
Yeah, it's we all know why he's been talked about.
Masquerading as a world, he's strutting around like Mayweather in his roller, right, with all his fancy jewelry and that, and he's not won a belt. Only belt he's got is a snake belt.
He's won nothing. He's won absolutely nothing, and he has not beaten a world-class opponent who is close to his prime. Now that's a statement of fact. And if he has been a world-class opponent who was in or close to his prime, please leave the name in the comments and we'll have a look at it.
Okay. Well, listen, I'm sorry for keeping you on for a free parter, but we've blown a few cobwebs off, haven't we?
Just don't ask me what I think of Eddie Hills as amateur credentials, because we'll be having a part 4, mate, and my back is killing me. All right, Russell.
Right, you take care, pal.
Keep the comments clean, guys. Thanks for watching, mate. See you, Russell. Take care, mate.
Right. Well, that was Julian from Dewsbury. Women love him, men want to be him. We've had a good one tonight. I think I'll have to send these three to Cameron because I'm shattered. And he can stick the old Spartan demolition adverts in at the front. All you people who are interested in having any civil engineering work done or whatever, get in touch. They're a good company. All right. Good sponsor to me. Okie dokie. I am off to make a cup of cocoa. I've got a penguin biscuit in the fridge winking at me. Go on, peace out. Thanks for liking and subscribing and leaving a comment. Max, give me a ring. I hope you're well, Max. I hear you're in training. Go on, Max. Big shout out to Mark in Stoke. Big shout out to Tom and Nikita and little baby Ray. I hope he's all right in that hospital. Booyaka. Peace out.
You like that one, didn't you? Right, first of all, I just want to say thank you very much for liking and subscribing. It means a lot to me because we're on this journey together, aren't we? So anybody got any ideas for the channel, fire them over to me, porkycorner@mail.com. All right. Shout out to Innovation Alloys and South Yorkshire Packaging. All right. Don't forget to subscribe, keep on trucking.